Is this your big scary weapon, or did you drop your lunch? Captain Briggs asked, prodding the alien device with the tip of his boot. The thing looked like a metallic egg, covered in glowing blue sigils that occasionally blinked. It sat in the middle of the negotiation table, surrounded by a circle of heavily armed aliens glaring at Briggs and his team. From their 8 glowing eyes to the jagged armor encasing their towering forms, the Vorthak were designed to intimidate. One of them growled in response to Briggs's question, a low, resonant sound like distant thunder. "This device," the Vorthak envoy boomed, its voice echoing through the chamber, "is a singularity core. It holds the power to obliterate your homeworld in the blink of an eye. Your species will kneel before the might of the Vorthak Dominion, or you will perish." Briggs cocked his head and raised an eyebrow, glancing at his second-in-command, Lieutenant Ward. The younger man shrugged, visibly unimpressed. Behind them, the rest of the human delegation, 3 engineers, a diplomat, and a field scientist, exchanged skeptical looks. Briggs leaned back in his chair and clasped his hands behind his head. "So, just to be clear, you're threatening to destroy Earth with this thing if we don't, what? Hand over our resources? Bow down to you? Start calling you the supreme space overlords?" The Vorthak envoy's mandibles twitched in what might have been irritation. "Surrender your territories. Submit your species to servitude under the Dominion. You will provide your technologies and labor to advance our empire." "And if we don't?" Briggs asked, his tone conversational. The Vorthak envoy jabbed a long, clawed finger toward the metallic egg. "Then this device will collapse your world into a singularity. Your species will be no more." Ward snorted, earning a sharp look from the Vorthak. "Sorry," he said, holding up his hands. It's always a singularity, isn't it? You guys ever think about using something original? You know, mix it up a bit?" The Vorthak envoy slammed its fist on the table, causing the egg to wobble slightly. "You mock the power of the Dominion? Your insolence will be your undoing." Briggs straightened, brushing imaginary dust off his uniform. "Look, big guy, I don't want to sound rude, but are we supposed to be scared? Because right now I'm just wondering what happens if I throw that thing in the trash compactor." The Vorthak envoy emitted a hissing sound that might have been a laugh. "Foolish human. The core is indestructible. Your primitive technology cannot harm it." "Ah," Briggs said, nodding thoughtfully. "Good to know." The Vorthak envoy rose to its full height, towering over the humans. "This is your final warning. Surrender now or face annihilation." Briggs exchanged another glance with Ward, then turned back to the envoy. "Okay, let's say we don't surrender. What happens next? You press a button, Earth goes boom, and we all learn an important lesson about messing with the big scary aliens?" "Precisely," the Vorthak envoy said. "Your destruction will serve as an example to all other civilizations who dare defy us." Right, Briggs said, nodding again. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "And this singularity core of yours, it's controlled remotely, I assume? Some kind of transmitter back on your ship?" "Correct," the envoy said, puffing out its chest. "Got it. And you're absolutely sure it works?" Briggs asked. The envoy hesitated. "Of course it works. The Dominion's technology is flawless." "Flawless," Briggs repeated. "Because, and I mean this with all due respect, I've seen a lot of so-called flawless alien tech that turned out to be, well, let's just say less than flawless." The envoy growled again, its glowing eyes narrowing. "Are you implying the Dominion's technology is inferior?" No, not at all," Briggs said, holding up his hands. "I'm just saying, maybe we should test it. You know, just to be sure." The Vorthak envoy looked genuinely taken aback. "Test it?" "Yeah," Briggs said, leaning back in his chair again. "Pick some uninhabited rock out in the middle of nowhere. Fire this bad boy up, and let's see what it can do. If it works, then hey, we'll know you're serious. If it doesn't, well, you can always try a different threat." The room fell silent, except for the faint hum of the singularity core. The Vorthak exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Finally, the envoy spoke. "You wish to see a demonstration of the core's power?" "Absolutely," Briggs said. "Nothing like a good demonstration to prove a point. It's just good business." The envoy seemed to consider this, then nodded slowly. Very well, we shall demonstrate the core's power. But know this, human, once you witness its might, there will be no turning back. Briggs smiled, looking forward to it. The envoy turned and barked an order in its native tongue. Two of the other Vorthak grabbed the singularity core and carried it out of the room, their massive forms barely fitting through the doorway. The envoy turned back to Briggs. We will prepare the demonstration. You will see the futility of resistance. Briggs nodded. Can't wait. As the Vorthak delegation left the room, Ward leaned over to Briggs. Do you really think they're going to blow something up just to prove a point? Briggs smirked. I have no idea, but if they do, we'll learn a lot about how that thing works. And if they don't, well, that'll tell us something too. Ward shook his head, chuckling. You're insane, you know that. Comes with the job, Briggs said. Now let's see if these guys are as scary as they think they are. The humans stood quietly in the observation chamber, watching through a massive window as the Vorthak prepared their demonstration. A barren moon floated lifelessly in the distance, its gray, cratered surface illuminated by the cold light of a distant star. The Vorthak had chosen it as the target for their singularity core, claiming it would make for an ideal display of destructive power. Captain Briggs stood at the front of the group, arms crossed, a faint smirk playing on his lips. Behind him, Lieutenant Ward and the rest of the human delegation whispered among themselves, casting curious glances at the alien device being positioned on the far side of the viewing platform. The Vorthak envoy approached, flanked by two of its heavily armored guards. The core has been calibrated, it announced. Once activated, it will consume the moon in seconds. Witness the power of the Dominion. Briggs tilted his head. So just to confirm, this thing won't accidentally send us all spiraling into a black hole too, right? Hate for that to be a case of friendly fire. The envoy bristled, its mandibles twitching. The core's targeting mechanisms are precise. The demonstration will affect only the moon. Well, that's reassuring, Briggs said, his voice dripping with casual sarcasm. He turned to Ward. You hear that? We're safe. No need to worry about getting sucked into oblivion. Ward chuckled softly. Good to know, sir. The envoy ignored the exchange and barked an order in its guttural language. One of the Vorthak technicians at the control console responded with a series of rapid clicks. The glowing sigils on the singularity core began to pulse more rapidly, their light growing brighter. A deep hum filled the chamber, vibrating through the walls and floor. Here we go, Briggs muttered, leaning forward slightly. The other humans followed suit, their eyes fixed on the moon. The hum reached a crescendo, and a beam of crackling energy shot out from the core, lancing across the void and striking the moon's surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then with an ear-splitting roar, the moon's crust began to collapse inward, its material spiraling toward a growing point of darkness at its center. The singularity expanded rapidly, swallowing the moon in a swirling vortex of light and debris. The humans watched in stunned silence as the moon vanished completely, leaving only the faint shimmer of residual energy in its place. The entire process had taken less than a minute. Well, Briggs said finally, breaking the silence, I'll give you this much. It's flashy. The envoy's eyes flared with a brilliant blue light, and its voice rumbled with satisfaction. Do you see now, human? This is the fate that awaits your world should you defy us. Briggs scratched his chin, pretending to ponder. Yeah, it's impressive, but I've got a question, the envoy growled. Speak. How many of those things do you have? Briggs asked, gesturing to the now dormant singularity core. The envoy hesitated. The Dominion possesses sufficient numbers to ensure compliance from all who oppose us. Briggs raised an eyebrow. That's a pretty vague answer. Let me put it this way. If we decided to call your bluff and say resisted, could you actually hit every major target on Earth with these? Or are you banking on scaring us into submission with one good magic trick? The envoy's mandibles twitched again. You question the Dominion's ability to enforce its will? Not questioning exactly, Briggs said, shrugging. Just curious. I mean, this thing you just did? Very dramatic, sure. But how scalable is it? Ward suppressed a laugh, turning it into a cough. The envoy's glowing eyes shifted between the two men, its irritation increasingly evident. Your defiance will not go unanswered, human. Do not mistake our patience for weakness. Briggs smiled faintly. Fair enough, but let me tell you something. Back on Earth, we've got a saying. Talk is cheap. You came all the way here, made a lot of noise about how powerful you are, but so far, all I've seen is one moon getting erased. You want us to believe you're serious? You're gonna have to do better than that. The Vorthak envoy let out a guttural hiss, its claws flexing. You dare mock the Dominion? I'm just saying, Briggs replied, his tone calm. If you're going to try and intimidate us, you might want to bring more than just one trick pony to the show. The tension in the room was palpable, the Vorthak guards shifting uneasily as their leader stared down Briggs. Finally, the envoy spoke, its voice cold and measured. You underestimate the Dominion, human. Such arrogance will be your undoing. Briggs nodded slowly as if considering the envoy's words. Maybe, or maybe we're just not as easily scared as you'd hoped. The envoy turned abruptly and barked another command to its subordinates. The guards moved to retrieve the Singularity Core, their movements brisk and purposeful. This conversation is over, the envoy said. You will have one final chance to comply. If you refuse, Earth will share the moon's fate. The humans watched as the Vorthak exited the chamber, the door sliding shut behind them. For a moment there was silence. Then Ward turned to Briggs, his expression a mixture of amusement and disbelief. You really know how to push their buttons, don't you? Briggs smirked. It's a gift, but we've got a bigger problem now. Ward frowned. You think they'll actually follow through? Briggs's smile faded. I think they might try, but that's not what worries me. What is then? Briggs's gaze hardened, figuring out how to take that thing apart before they get the chance. The humans worked quickly in the hours following the Vorthak's demonstration. Captain Briggs and his team convened in the confined quarters of their ship, every screen and console buzzing with data as they analyzed recordings of the Singularity Core in action. While the Vorthak believed they had instilled fear, the humans had been studying the device, breaking down its function, and most importantly, its vulnerabilities. Preliminary analysis shows an energy cascade around the core during activation, said Dr. Harris, the field scientist. His tone was calm but laced with urgency. If we can disrupt that cascade, maybe overload it, it could neutralize the device before it can fire. Briggs leaned over the console, scanning the graphs and schematics on the screen. Neutralize, huh? That's a nice way of saying, make it blow up. Harris nodded. Essentially, yes, if we get the timing right. Ward crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. And if we don't? Then we might get sucked into a black hole before they can use it on Earth, Harris admitted. But it's a better shot than waiting for them to pull the trigger. Briggs straightened, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. All right, let's assume we can pull this off. How do we get close enough to the core to actually make it happen? During their transport, Ward suggested, they'll need to move the core back to their ship. That's when it's vulnerable, before it's connected to their primary systems. Risky, Briggs muttered, but he didn't dismiss the idea. He turned to the group. We'll need a distraction, something that keeps them focused on us while a smaller team gets to the core. Ward grinned. I volunteer for the loud part. Briggs smirked. That's because you like hearing yourself talk. But fine, you'll lead the decoy team. The plan came together rapidly, every member of the crew playing their part. By the time the Vorthak were preparing to move the core, the humans were ready. The Vorthak ship loomed in orbit above the barren moon, a dark, spiked monstrosity that radiated menace. Inside, the alien warriors marched in formation, escorting the Singularity Core through the labyrinthine corridors toward its containment chamber. Briggs's team struck without warning. Ward and the decoy group launched a barrage of explosives into the docking bay, drawing immediate attention from the Vorthak guards. Sirens blared as alien warriors rushed to intercept the intruders. Amid the chaos, Briggs and Harris slipped into the shadows, weaving their way toward the Singularity Core. 5 minutes until they figure out the distraction, Ward's voice crackled over the comm. Make it count. We're on it, Briggs replied, keeping his voice low. The Singularity Core sat on a hover platform, glowing faintly as its sigils pulsed in an unsettling rhythm. 2 Vorthak technicians worked nearby, oblivious to the humans creeping up behind them. Briggs motioned to Harris, who held a small device, a makeshift disruptor designed to overload the core's energy cascade. "Let's hope your math is good," Briggs whispered. Harris rolled his eyes. "It's always good." With practiced precision, Briggs took out the technicians with a pair of silent strikes. The humans moved quickly, attaching the disruptor to the core. As Harris began the activation sequence, the core's glow intensified, its hum growing louder. 30 seconds, Harris muttered, his hands moving deftly over the disruptor's controls. Suddenly, a guttural roar echoed through the corridor. Briggs turned to see a squad of Vorthak charging toward them, weapons drawn. "We've got company," he barked. Ward's voice crackled over the comm again. "We're pinned down, can't get to you." Briggs raised his rifle, firing at the advancing aliens. "Harris, how long?" 10 seconds. Briggs ducked behind the platform, exchanging fire with the Vorthak. Their weapons scorched the walls around him, but he held his ground, giving Harris the time he needed. The core's hum became a piercing whine, and Harris shouted, "It's done! Move!" Briggs grabbed Harris by the arm, pulling him away as the disruptor activated. A surge of energy rippled through the core, its glowing sigils flickering erratically. The Vorthak hesitated, their eyes fixed on the malfunctioning device. Then it exploded. The blast wasn't the catastrophic singularity the Vorthak had threatened. Instead, it was a localized surge of energy, tearing through the immediate area and disabling the Vorthak systems. The humans were thrown to the ground, but Briggs quickly scrambled to his feet, dragging Harris with him. "Ward, status!" Briggs shouted into the comm. "Still alive," Ward replied, coughing. "What about you?" "We're clear," Briggs said. "The core's gone. Let's get out of here before they figure out what happened." The humans regrouped at the docking bay, fighting their way past disoriented Vorthak as they boarded their ship. Moments later, they were streaking away from the alien vessel, leaving it crippled and defenseless. Back aboard their ship, the humans watched as the Vorthak vessel retreated, its engines sputtering. The threat to Earth was over, at least for now. Ward leaned back in his chair, grinning. "Well, that was fun." Briggs shot him a look. "Fun isn't the word I'd use, but I'll take the win." Harris chuckled. "You think they'll come back?" Briggs considered this, then shook his head. "Not anytime soon. We just made them look foolish in front of the whole galaxy. That kind of humiliation takes a while to recover from." Ward smirked. "And if they do come back?" Briggs smiled faintly. "Then we'll be ready.